Anyway, welcome guys to the first ever Dog Pound episode 1. I'm so pumped. It's a big change for what I'm doing, but today I want to introduce our guest today. We have Ryan here. He is the manager of operation and events with Calgary Surge. If you guys don't know too much about myself, I worked for Ryan this past summer. It was a true privilege, and it was an amazing experience to say the least, and I cannot speak more highly of it. So thank you, Ryan, for being here today on the show.
No, thanks for having me on here. It's a pleasure to be, guest number one. It was a pleasure to work with you all summer here for the past 5 months there. So, what a year that was, what a lot of memories we had together, and no, glad we were able to do this together here as well.
Yeah, no, it's truly amazing, and I mean, what I'm really excited to go through. There's a lot of things I want to go through. I mean, it's a very short period of time that we have here today, but I do really want to what I said earlier in the intro to that. I want to encapsulate what's made some people successful in the sporting industry, and also to just kind of learn some background information here. But for me, like, again, no one's really here to listen to me. We're all here for you today, and honestly, like, I think where I always like starting, especially, obviously I know you really well, but a lot of people here don't. What really got you into the sporting industry? What drove you to, pursue sport management at Brock, which is where I'm at for those who may be unaware as well. What made you want to go into Brock, undertake sport management, and then now to where you are now?
Yeah, I think, it kind of starts off all firstly with a strong passion for sport. I don't think really anybody gets into the sporting industry unless they have a true passion for it. So, as a lot of us who grown up, we all play, youth sports, whether it's basketball, baseball, soccer, or football. So like myself, I played basketball and baseball and, slowly got into more and more sports as you got older and older and, always just had that passion to it. And, kind of as I was growing up, had a few injuries and, next thing you know, I'm at a physiotherapist and I'm like, oh my God, like, I want to be a physiotherapist. You start learning about like, what's life after school, your future, your career. And I was like, it'd be really cool to work with athletes, still connected to sports, but, in a way in which, you're getting them back on the field. And, that was kind of always a passion of mine. And, as I kind of get older and older and older, I start, really looking into, sport analytics. And I'm like, oh, broadcasting would be really cool, talking about it. And that's, kind of what we're doing right now is it's a type of sport broadcast. We're talking about sports, talking about kind of, anything going on in here. So, in one way or another, we're kind of still back into that kind of industry. So, kind of, as I'm in high school, it's like, oh, sports broadcasting would be kind of cool. And then kind of, I think I'm kind of in, end of high school. I'm like one of my friends who, went to Waterloo, University of Waterloo for sport and rec leisure, then ended up transferring to Brock, Brock University for the sports management program we both took. And he was like, hey, Ryan, you should look into this more. Like I end up transferring here. It's something more beyond just like sport and leisure. It's more about the business side of sports. So I was like, okay, this is actually kind of cool because like, as a big fan going to all the sporting events, you're like, you're there for the players, the final score, the win, and kind of, but then you realize there's a much more of a business behind it. The sporting industry is a huge business. It's $1 billion business. So kind of, how once I kind of learned about that, it's kind of like, all right, let's switch focus. Let's kind of get into, Brock University, take the sport management degree, and then kind of learn all about that sort of sport business. So you learn about, ticketing, sales, marketing, kind of, community networking, kind of all that kind of sums up in kind of the like it's really a business degree specialized in sports is how I kind of explain it to people. So that's kind of how I really got into the whole kind of like idea about even say working in sports because you talk with lots of people and yourself you're into it. It's one of the only schools and programs in Canada that you can study. So a lot of people find it very interesting that there's a career path and there's schooling for going to school in sports and studying sport business. So we're very lucky to do this and to as well work into the industry.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like completely unique, and it's funny that you said about the sport therapy thing, because like at one point I think it was high school, and same exact reasoning was like, oh, I'm hurt all the time, or I'm always going to get acupunctures done, then massage therapy done like twice, 3 times a week, just to keep up with playing competitive sport, and then so I got so into it. Like I remember I had a massage therapist, I always just asked him questions about like muscles and things. I took a sport med program in high school, and then COVID hit, which kind of took away from that hands-on experience. But then I thought, like I think the business side, the more in depth, like front office experiences, is so much more in depth than people actually realize. And I mean, like I think a passionate sporting fan understands how there's complexities, but even for me, I knew how what was behind a sporting organization, but then even like after the summer, you realize there's way more moving parts than like anyone could actually ever anticipate.
Yeah, no, truly based off what you just said there, kind of working in sport also, I don't say it ruins it, but it just gives you a different perspective when you go to an event. So you always kind of look at it differently, but in that way you're just kind of, fine picking things and, tuning things just like, what a guitar to make sure, it's at tune properly.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I mean, like to me, it's just it's cool, and it's and for me, like why I chose sport is it's different than what everyone else does. Like I think 90% of my friends from high school or even people I met in middle school then broke ways, split ways in high school. They all went into business or and I mean there were some people, a lot of people that did take that kinesiology route. You know how we originally thought about, but then we
Yeah.
found a whole new passion. Did you find that like following your time at Brock and in university and what you learned, were there any key steps that you took just to get to the next level? Like I know we'll touch in a bit too of how you work for the Nighthawks. I made sure to put the jersey up there
Yeah, I
that way
love
it's
it.
there, and we've got Calgary one right there as well. We'll touch on that in a
Mhm.
bit, but just like what were like key steps to really jump starting your career from, we'll say like during your time at Brock, and then now into really being into the sporting industry.
Yeah, no, I really think it's just getting involved. And, you've probably heard it many times before. I'm not going to be the first person, I'm going to be the last person to say this, but just getting involved, or whether that's, getting involved with, one of your university teams. It could be, trying to, start your own podcast, like something like this. Just keep doing something that's going to, show that you're just like working towards your end goal. So for myself, how did I get involved? I ended up, being connected and, actually was kind of like a college court, our company we kind of worked for was called the College Court Report, and we were basically like we followed college basketball in the States, the NCAA, and there's like 5 or 6 of us, and we basically all picked one team, kind of wrote like kind of followed them in a season, and just kind of wrote was a beat reporter for them. So we had a website on which we'd all wrote like kind of weekly and bi-weekly reports on how the team's doing, what the season's looking like, and the cool thing about that as well is just it just so happened to be the same year as Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, and then Cam Reddish, who I was actually a big fan of. I was really, in terms of this, the player side of things, I thought he was going to turn out to be, Paul George, the next big thing. So still hoping he can do that there. But, that was one of the things I did. So, I wanted to do something different. I knew I needed to, work on kind of my writing skills. And I was like, how can I, work on my writing skills, but, gain the value and do something, interesting and cool at the same time that's going to, improve my, your kind of your resume and the thing, why Ryan is Ryan, why Nick is Nick. What did you do to kind of stand out from, any other person in the job field, the candidacy and kind of all that. So that was one of the things I did as well. And then I also kind of got involved with the Niagara River Lions before the kind of CEBL even existed. So I worked on some of their basketball operations team for half of the season and kind of that. So kind of those are the two main things I did. And then as one of the cool things within the Brock University, sport management degree as well as one of the courses I ended up taking. I think it was called like 3P01 or 91, but it was basically like a program in which you kind of do like a mini internship with a university club team or some sort. So I ended up doing with basically the rec and the athletics department. So basically for 1 year, in which I think it was my third or fourth year there, I basically promoted Brock Sports. So that was like intramural signups and kind of anything reach your athletics in terms of getting students and clubs involved. So I was trying to think about new programs and new classes in which we can kind of promote to get kind of people involved. So I ended up launching like a 14 days of Christmas like challenge to try to get people involved and kind of active. So that was one of the things I tried to do to try to just like reinvent the wheel of some sort, just to kind of keep showing. It's also kind of exams times. We got to remember to be active, because like although we obviously need to study and everything, there's still, active brains, active bodies are going to make everybody feel better overall. So those are kind of the two ways that I get involved. I think kind of you just show you get involved. And even my internship, I ended up doing it a year early in school. I didn't want to wait till my full fourth year, which, thank goodness I did, because it ended up being a COVID that year. So I was pretty much one of the only people really in my program who really actually had like a full internship, just because I ended up, applying to the program a year earlier, and ended up just getting accepted with the Nighthawks. As you can see, the nice jersey behind you, retro. But that's kind of what I did to try to just get involved and try to stand out and try to show that like the long hours in the sporting industry. It's sometimes it's, it's very tough, but it's worth it in the end. And that's kind of the build up and kind of, just like yourself doing this podcast, you're not doing it, 9 to 5, you're going to stay up some late hours, doing this editing and that kind of all that. So that's kind of just the build up and kind of the steps and just, get involved, show somebody you're passionate and, that passion is going to get you, far in life here.
No, exactly. And there's definitely a big few things to touch on there for sure is involvement, regardless on if it's you applying for jobs as you did, say, with the River Lions or starting your own gig. Like for you guys doing that NCAA thing, like that is above and beyond. And even like if that's something that you don't put on your resume or something that you necessarily post on LinkedIn, that's still something where you're expanding your knowledge and that's getting you ahead of everyone else. And what's so unique about sporting industry because it's such a niche market, it's so much smaller than just like your average business. Like that gets you so much further ahead. Like for me, I see students here all the time that there's some that are so incredibly involved, and I don't know actually how they keep up with it. For me, I feel already so busy starting this up, and with school as well, and then like yeah, I'm doing a job here at Brock, but there's some people that are doing twice or three times as much as I am and commuting to Toronto, go do a job, and then come back, and those are the people that and ideally will go so much further, even if it's the title isn't all that fancy. For example, you're getting that experience that so many other people aren't, and that just it truly does jumpstart your career for sure.
Yeah, I heard a quote and the kind of, something that mentions you on that is just like kind of the hard work and dedication you put into it. And it's kind of the quote, it applies to, I think, players and, people in the workplace as well as, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse just because somebody's going, getting better. So like, you're trying to, passing up that opportunity, you kind of keep working towards that. So, always got to be hungry, and like you said, there's always going to be somebody to, work harder than you. So, you just got to make sure that, you put in that effort and there's nothing that you can say, like, I wish I just tried harder. That should never be words that come out of your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's exactly the whole idea behind this whole thing. The dog pound thing, like you gotta be you
Mhm.
have as you mentioned, be hungry, right? And I know legitimate dog always eats. And that's the exact idea, and that's what we're here to try and inspire as well. But it is, I think one of the first things that I was taught at job this summer was you guys said the sporting market will chew you and spit you out if you really don't put your head down. And I mean, like to me at first I was like, is that supposed to be intimidating? But honestly, that fired me up even more because like that's so cool. And I mean, that's how it was too, being an athlete. And right as you'd mentioned, like even just a practice or experience, like if you relate how a professional athlete like RJ Barrett, Zion Williamson, as mentioned earlier, they don't get to where they are with just going to the gym once a week and like just like oh sure I shot 50 shots today, that's good enough. Like you got to be there longer. I mean, like there's a whole story on Kobe getting up at whatever, probably 4 a.m. and he's a different breed of individual to say the least. But it what happens on the court or on the field translates to what happens in the office as well.
Yeah, all the Kobe stories are insane. I think I heard one time that in Team USA they're at a camp in Vegas and the team was coming home from the night out and he was leaving the lobby and they crossed each other's path and that's just why he's different, compared to everybody else.
Yeah, exactly, and that's totally what separates him. Well, let's switch gears a little bit here. I know we did mention the Guelph Nighthawks and obviously the super cool jersey that is behind me. I still personally like it. I'm just a blue guy though. I'm wearing blue right now. I like it better than most of the Surge stuff, but again, that's
The Blue Jays too.
yeah. I got the Jays. It's got the retro. I'm a big retro guy. I got Kirk on the back just because I thought he was he's a funny character of a baseball player. He's a little short, stubbier. But I love, again, he's like, to me, he gives me, he's an energy player who I always gravitate to. I mean, like, if
It
this,
doesn't fit the mold of a player there, but that's why you love him.
yeah, literally. And I mean, like, that's those, like, there's certain things that grab you towards a sport. So for me, like, I hadn't been paying attention to Blue Jays for a while. But then, seeing Kirk and, like, I actually really didn't pay attention since the big era of, like, Jose Bautista, Edwin Encarnacion, like, when they're, like, that team. Just because I'm so I don't watch baseball enough,
Yeah.
but when they're doing good, I'll pay attention to it. But when they're not,
Mhm.
I'm like that. But when it comes to like Suns for example, I'll try and watch all 82 games because like that's something I just associate myself differently with. But again, brand association's a whole different topic too in itself. But I guess a little bit enough about retro for me. What I want to get into You came with the team from Guelph to Calgary. So for those, again, a little background, Guelph Nighthawks were in the CBL for quite some time, and then they relocated to Calgary. So Calgary just wrapped up their second season. And I mean, from my experience, I say it's still a complete success. I mean, you could probably speak to it completely differently, potentially, but just like talk to me a little bit about that desire to follow the team. What the whole, if you know the whole business and backside story of how that actual relocation process happened, and like the even the buying process and movement of management. If you could just speak on that, like I think that is the coolest thing about your job as of right now for sure.
No, I'm glad you touched on that here, Nick. And kind of it's kind of the one thing that I think separates myself compared to like almost anybody else, and who works in the sporting industry, like let alone in Canada, like not really many pro sports teams have really folded and kind of relocated. So obviously you got all the NHL teams. That's not kind of happening. The Jets came back, I guess you can say, but currently. Currently, currently I think they're the probably one of the most recent relocations. So yeah, I was with Guelph for about 4 years. Then kind of after I think it was 2022 season, we basically got told that the I got told in kind of championship weekend, it was in Ottawa. I was also working part-time, actually, oddly enough, for the Scarborough Shooting Stars. So we end up having we were in Ottawa in the finals against the then Hamilton Honey Badgers, now Brampton Honey Badgers. I guess they got relocated. That's a complete lie from everything I just said. I just contradicted myself. But yeah, Guelph got relocated, I guess, yeah, all the way across the country. So kind of, in the first part of the ad, obviously, my heart's broken, kind of been a part of, Guelph since day one before before the first ever team, played their game, scored their first point, the public jersey was even launched. I kind of got into my internship, kind of the similar thing to you did, kind of right before the season started. It started in May 2019. I did a few community events around the city of Guelph, kind of in the months leading up to that. But, really once May happened, my year of school ended in the end of April. I kind of just went full time into that season there with Guelph. And I was kind of at that point, I was like, you know what, I want to promote Canada basketball and sports. Like, I think this is the coolest thing, and it is. So for everybody who doesn't know, the CBL is basically the Canadian League Basketball League. It's a 4 to 5 month summer basketball league in which, Canadians, all around the world, there's I think about 36 Canadians in the NBA, the second most of any nationality across the world. And, there's hundreds and thousands more Canadians who play pro basketball across the world. And, kind of, during the same NBA season, September till April, these players, in Europe and Asia and South America, they're playing basketball. So they are, in the summertime, in the summertime, they're coming home, not really doing any training. So that was kind of how the league kind of came to exist, is like, how can we give them a fundamental spot to train, get better, move them up to, new divisions to make more money and get more Canadians in the NBA to obviously, compete at the world stage, in which, we saw a very competitive team with Team Canada here at the Olympics. But, leading up into that, a lot of the Team Canada players leading into the FIBA tournaments are, former CBL players who just finished playing in the CBL. So that's super cool. But the whole relocation process of it was basically from kind of, what it's been now, now 2 years after almost, I'm talking with my colleague Dylan, we're like, it's almost, exactly to the date, 2 years when we moved to Calgary. But, if you look at it, I think Guelph's around the 50th biggest city in Canada. Calgary is around the fourth biggest city, if I'm not mistaken, behind Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and Calgary. It's, somewhere around 1.5 million. So when you go from a city of, let's just call it 250,000 to 1.5 million, that's a huge increase. And kind of, as the CBL kind of started growing, they touched their foot in Montreal and, had a lot of big fan bases there. So, they obviously needed to start and, have a core fan base of, what is this? How is this really going to work? And kind of, once you get the wheels churning and everything, everything starts kind of going aligned. That's when you said, okay, we need to expand and we need to, kind of grow this thing rapidly, and kind of at a point at which, we're now on, TSN, which is super cool. We have national broadcast games with them as well. So, if you're the comfort of your house, across Canada, if you're in Vancouver, Ontario and Toronto, or all the way out in Newfoundland on the East Coast, you could watch a CBL game. So that was kind of the gist of the whole relocation process. But there's very many cool things about launching the team in Calgary. In terms of we actually went through a logo redesign. Before we actually launched, we had a full different logo, which this has been touched on publicly. But like literally 2 weeks before our launch of our first ever press conference, we ended up rechanging our logo. And I think the logo we have right now is amazing, and it's super cool, as well as we're able to take those purchase those, somehow come up with the ownership of the trade rights of the Calgary 88s, which is another, retro pay homage team to the city. So there's a lot of great things in which we were able to, build so far here in Calgary in just 2 years so far since relocating from Guelph.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, there's so much to touch on that too. And I mean, like, I guess for you, for working for them for so long and being from Ontario yourself too, like it's no easy thing. Like for me, like it makes me think of when Winnipeg left, when Winnipeg Jets left, and then they brought them back. And I mean, that was one thing that we've always learned, how like that was such a, I wouldn't say controversial moment of time, but it was one of those like, okay, fans need to start showing up. I think, but as you mentioned, like having let's assume 250,000 people in Guelph to 1.5 million, like that increases, even if the market is pretty similar for the love of basketball, say in Calgary versus Guelph. Just having that extra population can actually do so much more, and then you're actually impacting such a larger community too, which that can actually be seen on such a larger scale. But it's all incredibly fascinating. And I mean, like, I know there's a whole report that like the commissioner Mike Morreale, who I guess he posted a while ago too on his LinkedIn, that it was out of Thorold, which is odd, where he created the whole CEBL, which is cool because that's where I'm situated right now. But like that, for him, he had mentioned that he was specifically targeting Calgary for quite some time. And so, when I first read that, like obviously I'd known Guelph had already moved and all that. But at the same time, to me, it's like I would have never pictured any commissioner targeting Calgary for basketball. Like I know it's quite big, especially in the south and northern end of Calgary for sure. But compared to Ontario, like Ontario, I know is filled with stars, right? And that's where you see those guys in the NBA, or those guys playing overseas. I'd probably say 80% of Canadian pro basketball players are from Ontario, right?
No, fully agree with you there. But I think kind of the one thing that's cool in what you mentioned there is kind of like he really did target the Calgary, kind of during the cool thing about the cool thing about one of the mini projects, the CBL, the part was called the BCLAs, and there was basically like it was basically like a championships of all the Americanas, countries around North America and South America. So they ended up Edmonton Stingers ended up winning one of the championships back in either I think 2021 or 2020, and the BCLAs, ended up, coming to Calgary, instead of, I think instead of hosting both games in Edmonton, they want to, test the market in Calgary, see what the fan base was like. And like, that's a tough sell, being not really a huge hockey fan, but a fan of the Washington Capitals, obviously, growing up in Ontario, knowing that, the Maple Leafs, the Ottawa Senators, the Montreal Canadiens, the huge, fan base that there is, and then, moving out here, learning about the rivalry between, the Flames and the Oilers is like, how is a basketball fan going to represent the Battle of Alberta? What's that going to play like? There's for that weekend and for that game for the tournament, it was in Calgary, and the Calgary fan base had to cheer for Edmonton based team, which is I don't think use yourself. You grew up here. I don't think you would ever say I'm an Oilers fan. Just the kind of that's just not what you do here. So you're not going to grow up in Toronto and be like, yo, I'm a Canadiens fan. So that's kind of the funny thing it is. But even with all that being said, that I think they had a great ticket sell. The fan base kind of kind of was really excited about what this could be, and kind of like growing up, not growing up here, but spending the last 2 years here. It's like, oh my God, like I wish I wish Calgary would have got a team from day one, because like who knows what this thing would have been right now. But 6 years into it, but that's super cool that we're a part of this right now, and we get to grow this and kind of take on those new challenges, because we've done some pretty remarkable things, from launching a game in the Saddle Dome to having a an all-star skills dunk competition this season as well. So it's just the beginning and the small journey of the CBL, and especially the Calgary Surge. But there is many big things down the road, which I super excited to be about.
Yeah, no kidding. And I mean, like there's so many different ways to measure success, and honestly, like for this year, like that whole dome experience was like something that I will never personally forget. I'm sure same with yourself. I mean, again, that game broke the CEBL record for total attendance, but it also puts it in perspective like how large 12,000 plus people is. Because for me, when I go to Flames game, you think that's like that should be your average crowd, and in reality, that's actually not, because they have all the bowls open, and then there's we add however many 1,000 plus seats down on the court level, right? So it's just like that whole view, but the atmosphere was crazy. Is there any way you could touch on just that whole, that whole relationship with CSEC and having to, like set that whole game up, because that's no easy feat. That is something that, it hasn't actually been done in Calgary since '88, right? Like that, and that to me, again, as you mentioned, paying homage, like, was one of the coolest things I've seen as a Calgarian.
Yeah, no, that whole process was super cool. I think we ended up launching the official, Search the Dome back in, I think it was like late November, around November 2022. I guess it would have been 2013. That was the official date of it. But, myself internally, I think I started, hearing around the office, from our ownership that, around October, late September, that this was kind of happening. It was just kind of a matter of time. So, keep your lips sealed and don't let this squeak out. But, once we do have that press conference, this is kind of just going to be, everything's just going to be towards that. But working with with CSEC was super cool. I think we had our first meeting with them, just kind of before Christmas, just because, we want to introduce ourselves and kind of, just get the ball rolling. So first meeting was super well, kind of got to, learn all their, different departments, in the CBL, we have a smaller office, you kind of touch parts in a lot of different sectors of the industry. And it's like, oh, hey, I kind of work in, merchandise, game day entertainment, and as well kind of like, just general operations for the team. And then you go to like a meeting with the CSEC for the first time, instead of meeting somebody like myself who's playing, potentially, three roles in an industry, you're meeting, on their team, six people, because, there's 2+ people in each sector of the industry. And it's like, holy smokes, like, it's just a different beast, even for myself. Like, I've never worked in the NHL, the NBA, I don't really have that experience, but I have worked 6 years in the CBL. So this is now kind of it's kind of a, you kind of, you'll see, how your industry and your work life is completely different, even though, you're both work for a pro sports team in Canada, in the same city, but you have a very different, just like office life, because obviously, different, different sectors and different, like, they're part of the big four of the NHL. Obviously, they're the the big dogs, you could say, of the city. Funny enough, but I think we had monthly and biweekly meetings with them, pretty much from January going all the way to May. It was kind of tough because, as they're themselves, I think hockey, kind of ends right around April, beginning of May, and, they're planning playoffs, so like our date we knew was always going to be, May 22nd. I hope I really didn't get that wrong. But I think May 21st, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, damn, that
I think it's the
sucks.
25th.
But
That's okay.
yeah, but it was an uncertainty of when we could, make the venue ours, and when we can kind of transform it, like you said, become a basketball venue, which it hasn't been for so long. So it was really just like a wait up of almost like, weeks, like literally like probably 10 days before. We didn't know what day we were moving the court in. And, I'm calling the freight company being like, hey, so it could be on the Thursday, it could be on the Friday, and there, there's a chance it could be on the Monday, but, you just kind of, got to make sure that, kind of once you get that final, okay, here's the plan, here's what's instead, that everything else can just keep kind of moving. Because, with that, it's just such a quick turnaround. I think, even after the game, teardown happened within like 3 hours of the game, as you saw yourself. Like, the fans exit the building, 30 minutes, there's no fans in the building. And then next thing you know is, like tear down starts for the game. You start, taking down the merch booth, taking down the kind of, the courtside seats and kind of everything like that. So there was just a whole process in kind of terms of just like, just really waiting. But, throughout the months of January to, beginning of May, in which, we could kind of, really get the things going, there was like, all right, how are we working with ticket sales? Got to make sure all the concessions are opens up. With the Saddle Dome, it's not just our staff working the game; it's the Saddle Dome staff as well working the game for CSEC. So it wasn't just a one-man wrecking crew. There's both organizations need to work, unanimously together to kind of put this on. So, I can't wait to hopefully have a game in there again this coming year, as that was so special. Hopefully it goes from 1 game to 3 games to 5 games to a season. And, I think, down the road with the, let's just be optimistic and have our fingers crossed, with the new venue coming down here, I think 2027, I think there's going to be time in which, around the CBL, that many teams are playing in, these big venues. I think, 2 weeks ago, Scarborough Shooting Stars, in the CBL, launched that they're building their own arena, which is awesome because that's going to be their own private arena. They're going to be able to host their mini events as well, maybe concerts as well going on there. So that's just super cool and super to see how the growth of the CBL is kind of really taking off in year 6 and kind of showing that this thing is a long-term longevity and that they can really handle the main stage.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, like, from everything you have said from the Surge and then as well to Scarborough, it could show you how quickly growth can happen within a league, right? Like, I mean, that news to me
Mhm.
was huge because I think almost every team has been playing out in a venue that is not their own. I mean, the Surge played with
Mhm.
Winsport, and that entire movement process of the court. I mean, you experienced that firsthand. I was basically there for it too, of just seeing it all get loaded up on trailers. Like, that is what that sacrifice, all that time and planning and effort is what is required to take an organization next step. And that same thing applies to yourself as an individual, myself and anyone who watches as well. It is really inspiring to see. It was when the team came to town, it was the first time I heard about the CEBL. And then now it's like something way more talked about. Like today, I was in the gym. I wore CBL socks,
I love
the black ones, and some guy came up to me and
it.
goes, "Where would you get a pair of those?" And I was like, well, you know what? Turns out I worked for them, and some players didn't take some, so they became mine, and I try and wear them. But
We got to get you a white pair though, but what's cool, but for what you mentioned there as well, Nick, is the next day that I think it was the day after the game, me and you were at the venue again, moving the court, and I don't know if you remember, but it was just pouring rain. It was raining outside, and it just made the whole process of moving the court and getting it loaded onto the transport, that much more difficult. And again, there's nothing you can prepare for. And that day we needed the court to get removed, so it was just again there was just the timing of the move. There's nothing you can do. Control the weather. It's just kind of you gotta take with what you're dealt and adapt with it. It was like, all right, once we get two full rows of the court stacked on the truck, let's cover with the tarp so it's just not getting pelted with rain for an hour, 2 hours straight, and you can kind of stretch the wood out. So there's just so many like mini challenges and just like nuances like that I think that an average person again would never know about, things that go on in the sporting industry, or having maybe even yourself, I think you might didn't know, but at Champ Weekend, the final game broadcast went down, something happened with the booth, and it's like, how did this happen? It's like, okay, within a minute, 2 minutes it's back up. It's like, okay, like you really just gotta be on your toes because you never know when like something major can just happen and kind of throw a wrench into everything.
no, exactly. And like that's something we even learned about too. Like I remember when we did event management class last year, they really talked about having contingency plans. And like that was, for that championship weekend game, that was all on TSN as well. So that was a TSN thing, and that's like the top dog in Canada, other than Sportsnet as well for broadcasting everything, right? Like typically we just run most games except for a few for each team are run through the CBL Plus stream, which is again that could have collapsed itself. But the fact that TSN collapsed, that means that anything could happen, and that was an entire weather thing. Because I remember, Marielle, who's another boss of mine, coworker of Ryan and I, she was working actually for the league, and so she was texting us all these live updates because we had no access to any of that. Like we could look on the CBL page, but even that wasn't processing things correctly. But the game has to go on, right? So there's so many things you have to account for. Like I mean, for today, like something could go wrong. Like there's a notification popped up that says like, oh, your Zoom thing's gonna
The
lag,
timing.
and I'm like, you had to put that in the middle of the screen. But again, that's something
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily account for. But going forward, that's something you learn about. I guess since I am running out of time with with the program I've got, don't have anything fancy quite yet. I want to close off with for your from based on all your experience. I know you touched on some things too about just getting out there, opportunities, creating opportunities for yourself. Do you think you have like one or a few big pieces of advice that you'd give to anyone looking to get in the sporting industry or just any industry at all, like how to separate yourself differently compared to just the average Joe?
Yeah, no, Nick, thanks for having me on. It's been been a pleasure. I hope I'm certified as a an official dog. I also want to after we get through this, can you tell the story of of you receiving your dog jersey and kind of going through that moment. I think that that'd be something that's, be great for everybody here and kind of, understand of kind of, you truly speak on, being a dog. And I think, kind of going towards this, rather you're a player on the court, or in the office, you should always, work your hardest and kind of going through that, but the advice I'd give out, I think I've been saying it for, many years now, but it's, just be dedicated and, be hardworking. So, for being dedicated, that's being passionate, having the love for what you do, I think, many times growing up, my gym teachers, my coaches, my parents, they always told me, it's like, do something you love. Like, why would you want to, wake up, kind of, dread that kind of walk, that commute to work in the morning, can't wait to go home and kind of, live your personal life. But it's like, no, like, I want to go to work. I want to live this life. I want to be happy. I want to do something that's, kind of like challenging, but also, so rewarding at the same time. So, that for me, that's working in sport, for somebody else that, that's coaching, that's being a teacher. Many teachers are very passionate about what they do because they want to grow society and the community. So it's find that passion of what you what is you and what what you're connected to. Is be dedicated. Give that your time. Really give it everything. Don't give your reason of why you can't be like, oh, I wish I just I wish I would have volunteered at this camp or this tournament or this event instead of doing something that it could be worthwhile with a social life. But there's always going to be that opportunity to to get involved. So don't ever say anything down. So my first thing is always be dedicated, and then it's hard work. So whatever it is, there's going to be people who are smarter than you, know more connection than they may have a better resume than you. But if you're just hardworking, maybe for what that reason they're kind of you're sluggish, but for working hard, giving it your all, showing that somebody you want to learn, you want to be there. I think that's also a great trait in which I'm looking for when trying to find people like yourself who are coming in for 4 or 5 months working for us, and you're kind of getting their first experience into the sporting industry. Is like you yourself, you're dedicating, you're such a hard worker, you want to put the Dog Pound podcast together. That was something I hear talking to Jacob and other people in your teams, how can you work with new softwares, taking up the skill of learning Canva and doing graphic designing. That's not an easy skill. That is so hard, and so talented to kind of overcome everything. So just being being dedicated, being hardworking, in any sector, I know that's going to make you successful and work and run life. So that's also to your relationships and to everything outside of work as well. I think that can apply to just life in general.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you touch on so much there. But I think once you got that dedication, especially if, you're passionate about it, that dedication just comes with it. I mean, for me, like,
Exactly.
I'm not for me, I wouldn't say, podcasting was always what I've wanted to do in life. But I'm so passionate about sport and about, what I can learn from individuals such as yourself and anyone else I'm going to have on this, that this is, I love it. And I will put in all the work, right? And do all that, all the Canva, all the back stuff that no one really has an appreciation for. And I mean, like, as you mentioned too, I guess I should shout out the dog. I'll grab the jersey right now. But
Oh yeah, I guess it's just on the back of it.
it is on the back of it, so hopefully the camera
Yeah.
flips it. So it
Hot
says
dog.
Top Dog, and so today's episode is Top Dog with Ryan, because essentially what I started at, I guess, with the surge is that everyone in the office is dogs, because people are there grinding, sweating, even though it may not look like there's sweat on their face. Everyone was stressed all the time, but everyone came together and truly put on like the best show and the best organization. So that's, to me, the definition of it is, someone, you're hungry, and you can come together as a team, and that's why I started this today. Yeah, that may have ended perfectly. I mean, it swapped my camera over, so now it's on my computer, but that's okay. We could close out with me being on my computer camera instead of my phone. But yeah, just go be hungry, as Ryan has mentioned, and that's what we're here to inspire to do. And again, as the motto says for the Dog Pound, grow your playbook. That playbook is not just a piece of paper. It's simply what you learn in your head, and what you get to visualize and see and learn from all these guests, and that's the whole point. So thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate your time today. I know you're super busy with the off season and as well as preparing for the next coming 2025 season. I hope you guys really enjoyed today's episode. I mean, I had a blast filming it, but thank you again, Ryan, for being on it. We really appreciate it.
No, Nick, thanks for having me on. And I hope this officially means I'm a certified top dog and dog here. But I can't wait to catch many more of these episodes from you, and see the season grow, and see how the season of podcast goes from you. As I know, as you mentioned, season one last year, kind of revamping to season two, just like myself in this off season. So catch up this episode of the Top Dog podcast, and make sure you check out the rest of them as well. Appreciate you having you on. Best of luck, and thanks again for having me in here, Nick.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Appreciate it. And yeah, make sure to check out next week. We do have another cool guest. He's not maybe a top dog, but it may be our first athlete that will be appearing.
Oh,
So super excited for this one. But yeah, should be a really good season. So stay tuned. Thank you again, Ryan. Take care. Best of luck with Dawgs.